Hey gang, howdy howdy. Okay, so this is the introduction video for Com 409, the rhetorical tradition. And welcome, hello. My name is Donovan Conley. I'll be your instructor for this class for this semester. I have the syllabus that I printed off here. I'm going to talk about the class, the structure of the class, how to approach the class, success, what success looks like, how to think about what we're doing here, a little bit about myself, and I'll try to do that in about 10 to 15 minutes. My name is Donovan Conley. I'm an associate professor in our department. I study rhetoric and culture and like technology and food, and I'm really interested in taste. And I've taught this particular class, I think, longer than any other. If you look into my computer files under this class and all the different folders for the different semesters, oh man, it's a lot. I've taught this a lot because I do it basically at least one section every single semester, and including the summer. And so that's like 3 times a year at least. So that's 3 sections, could be more. And I've done some version of the class since I joined the department in 2004. I'm the most senior, longest serving member of this department, and this is the class that I've taught. Or like I say, some version. It used to be 211. It sort of switched over at some point. I've done this at the level of grad students as well. And it's largely the same class that I taught 20 plus years ago, but it has in fact changed a little bit. And I did a major course redesign and a rebuild a couple of summers ago, and I had teams in online ed helping me. So the class is really nicely built in Canvas, I believe, and the material itself is pretty fresh and pretty like up to date in terms of new thoughts about things to add and engage. There used to be a ton more stuff on, like, after we would do the ancient stuff, Greek and Roman, we would spend some time in Europe in the Middle Ages and Italy and France and Germany, and there was like some important stuff that we would look at in like the 16th and 17th centuries, and we just like got rid of all that so that we can spend more time on 20th century and more recently. Okay, so it's a little bit maybe fresher, a little bit more current, but we still do begin at the beginnings, at least in the Western tradition. That's in Athens in 5th century BC with the rise of democracy and free citizens. A select few citizens got to be free, and rhetoric became really important in terms of how you persuade and influence one another, like not using violence or magic or trickery. Like, are there good, robust ways of trying to win over audiences and make your case? So that's sort of where it all got going. We'll look at that a little bit in the beginnings, establishing the kind of baseline foundational concepts and principles and so on. It's not just meant to appease the old white dead guy gods. It's just like this stuff is still really, really useful. Aristotle, whatever you think about Aristotle, like the enthymeme is still a useful way of talking about connections and how we make inferences about one another, and we assume things about one another, and how when we understand a little bit about our audience, we don't have to necessarily state everything explicitly. We can develop these subtle connections, these low-level kind of like winks. That's the kind of stuff that Aristotle was interested in. Really slick, clever approach to thinking about persuasion. So we'll start in the ancient world, and then we'll launch into the 20th century and spend most of our time there. So the structure of the class is 4 units. I don't know why I'm doing this to myself. In my other classes, they're called modules. In this class, they're called units. But a unit is about 4 weeks of content. I think maybe the modules are the weekly stuff within the units. But in any case, 4 units, right? We got classical origins. We got 20th century resurgence. So that's like sort of the first half of the 20th century. Then we've got rethinking rhetoric. So that a lot of critical questions got asked. 60s, 70s, 80s, and so on. And then this new century and everything that's happened in the first, about 25 years is what we're going to call rhetoric's contemporary challenges. All right. So I think you'll see a lot of through lines. I think you'll see a lot of themes that carry forward from those ancient times. We have to kind of resituate, sort of think about context in different ways, but a lot of the same concerns, the same problems, Similar approaches to problems. Getting back to basics is never a terrible thing, and that's a lot of what we're up to here. So that's the kind of the overall structure, and the James Herrick textbook is the one we're using. I'm not sure where mine is right now. Just grab one of the most recent editions, 7th or 6th, I think we're on right now. Dude must be so rich at this point. I must have put so much money in that guy's pocket. He's got, 7 or 8 editions of this book. There's a lot of them out there. I've used this one for a while. It's pretty user-friendly. It covers the topics pretty well. So that's just what we use. Do get yourself a Herrick, but there's a lot of other stuff that I post and that's in Canvas for you already. All right. And then we have a lot of video lectures just like this, and some supplementary stuff like notes, useful videos, little add-ons and so on. That kind of covers the material in the 6 minutes. Good. Now for assignments, okay, this is where I probably need to spend most of my time. Assignments, and specifically this business of contract grading. I have switched over to contract grading in most of my classes, and this is, I think, the first one that I did. And I did this, I think, this last spring. Spent a good amount of time reworking the assignments and the assignment structure. And it's a big shift, but I'm pretty happy with it, and I keep doing it. So I just did this with my language and thought class, and I'll probably keep doing it with new stuff that I teach if I'm able to. So the approach here, the reasoning behind the contract grading is not every student has the same level of investment and interest and time to devote to a given class. So instead of kind of forcing everyone through the same hole of assignments and then grading some better and some worse, how about if we just have robust expectations for any given assignment? You get to decide how much you do, right? So it's more of a choose your own adventure, right? So it's based on the amount of assignments you do and not necessarily how well you do on any particular assignment. So the bar is the same for everyone for every assignment. There are completion standards or completion expectations, which is your rubric. It's how you want to be thinking about, what am I being graded on, or what matters in this assignment. Every assignment has completion standards. They're in the syllabus, and they're at the bottom of every assignment description in Canvas. Super important that you pay attention to those completion standards. I even phrased them in the assignment descriptions like a checklist. I chose a topic that is da-da-da-da-da. I made sure to. So it's actually asking you to sort of take ownership of each part of it, just to make sure that you're hitting the completion standards. And if you do, that's it. That assignment is good. You are complete, check, A-OK, green light, thumbs up, done, right? You do that 4 times. Let me make sure I get this right. So on the 3rd page there's a little box that lays this out. Everyone has to do, let me talk about the quizzes. There are 4 quizzes, and everyone, regardless of contract, must do all 4 quizzes. They are, I think, just 10 questions. No, maybe they're more questions. They're 10 points. Yeah, 1 question each, or 1 point each. So 10 questions, and I'm only asking that you just get 9 out of 10. And if you don't get it the first time, then you get to retake it and retake it and retake it until you finally get 9 out of 10, and then you're done. Okay, so it's sort of like a homework assignment. I'm tired of stressing about are they learning the material first and then taking the test, or are they cheating by looking through? Well, of course you have your materials open. I would probably too. So I'm thinking about this less as a test and more of a homework activity where you go and you get prompted with these questions and you go find the answer, and hopefully that's a learning process along the way. So all 4 quizzes for everyone, 9 out of 10, you're done. Now, beyond that, if you want an A, do any 4 of 5 major assignments. So there's 5 major assignments. You choose which 4 you want to do. You can choose them based on which 4 sound most interesting. You can choose them based on when they land, based on your own schedule. I don't care. That's the beauty of this. You get to decide which assignments, how many assignments, and when you submit. Okay, so I think that's pretty awesome. If I was a student, I'd probably like that. It's I really like this one, looks really interesting. I know that I want a B, so that means that I only have to do 3 of the 5 major assignments. So let me choose the 3 most interesting ones. Or I know that I'm going to be swamped with activities. I got to travel around this time, so let me block that out and do all the assignments before that time. This is meant to be more flexible for your lives. But when you do an assignment, everyone has the same expectations, right? And so, and it's not like A plus expectations. These are probably like B plus, A minus level expectations, but everyone is asked to clear the same bar. So it's not that some people are running a faster race and some people are running a slower race. Everyone's running the same speed more or less, but you're just running fewer or more races. Does that make sense? That's the idea here. So in terms of like maximizing your success with this system, look at the assignments up front as soon as possible, read them through, get a sense of which ones you're going to want to go for. You don't have to commit to any contract. I used to do this like, tell me what contract, and it's meant to kind of like hold you to it, but there's no accountability here. It's what you do or don't do ultimately that determines which grade you get. Just the amount of assignments. So you have the whole semester to do 4 of 5 major assignments. Again, you choose when you submit, which ones, all up to you, okay? I'm not going to police any of that. And I will say that I also give you some flexibility with the deadlines, okay? And so everything is spaced out when it should land more or less with the material when you learn it, and then before the next assignment is due. Like there's a kind of rhythm to all that. All assignments are due on Sundays, okay? They will be open plenty of weeks beforehand so you can think about them, you can prep, you can process, you can meet with me if you have questions. When that Sunday deadline hits, I leave the assignment open for submissions through the following Wednesday. Shh, quiet. I don't like to announce that too much, but that's my practice because I don't turn around and grade them immediately on a Monday or a Tuesday necessarily. So go ahead and, a few grace days, a few days of grace period, and then that's it. Once that Wednesday hits after the Sunday deadline, it's locked forever. And you cannot come to me later and say, I spaced out, I didn't realize. Okay, so this is your big warning that there's a ton of flexibility in this class except late work. There's no late work. Okay, so you do the work, you submit when you submit it, and that's that. But I feel like there's enough flexibility in the schedule, especially with the 4 out of 5. So even if you want an A and you miss one assignment, there's still like another one that you can pick up, presumably, right? So that's the idea here. That's the one kind of strict part of this whole thing. The whole thing doesn't really work if everyone is kind of like able to submit whenever they want anyway, right? So it's really meant to be sort of like, if you are wanting a little bit more free time, great, just choose 2 assignments, but you're still responsible for when you submit those, okay? So of those major assignments, I keep changing things in the time of AI. I got to sort of try to constantly revise and rethink for kinds of assignments you can use AI on, but you still need to be the creative director, and you still need to be the voice, and you still need to be the brain that's deriving everything. So there's a note on AI in here. I encourage you to read it through. There's definitely better and way worse ways of using AI. So I have used AI in like the generation of notes and different parts of the assignment or the class itself. I'll just say that. But anytime I'm using it, I'm double checking, I'm reading through everything, I'm going back and I'm saying, nope, that's not working, let's try this. So I'm always the creative director of anything that I'm doing when I'm working with AI, and I'm not just blindly sort of saying, here you go, give me whatever, okay, post. That's bad, right? So I'm not naive here. I know that we're all using this kind of stuff, but I want you to use it actively. I want you to use it agentially. When you are the agent, you are the determiner of final ideas. You are the one who's shaping it, pushing it, guiding it. Okay, that's the way to do it. So we have one paper, the concept paper. We have a grid, an ancient knowledge grid that's meant to be helpful with the 4 main models of rhetoric and kind of getting those clear. We have a scrapbook that asks you to think about sort of rhetoric in the wild as we're going through the different modules, right? Like the first modules are all about like speeches and oral kind of stuff and argumentation and public, presentations. It's asking you to sort of find some samples of the things that we're talking about as we're going. So you're sort of scrapbooking where, rhetoric as you're discovering it. And this one's just sort of asking you to pay attention as you're learning about rhetoric to the world around you, and as you notice things, kind of grab them and throw them in a scrapbook kind of idea, right? So it's kind of low level, but you got to keep it in mind sort of like periodically, just so you can find some cool concepts and cool examples. And then this business of let's see, did I miss one? Scrapbook, concept paper. Concept diagram is one that I really like too. That one's really asking you to lean into the AI stuff by saying, okay, here's a whole bunch of concepts in rhetoric. Now I want you to come up with a diagram. And when I say diagram, I mean an actual visualization, a creative visualization. You're coming up with, imagine you're coming up with like a brand logo or something like this. You have all kinds of creative license to tell AI what to represent, but it's your interpretation of that concept that matters here. It's not just, load a bunch of stuff into AI and say, do this for me. It is, I want to stress, like if we're talking about Kenneth Burke's concept of the negative, you can say, I want to stress the relationship between the negative and law, right? Or punishment, crime and punishment or whatever. You can totally take that particular kind of interpretation, right? And then you get AI to render that as a diagram, as an image, a visual. What you do with that is totally up to you. So there's a lot of creative license on that. And I've seen some really, really cool concept diagrams. And again, it works best when you are in charge of the interpretation and you are the one who's telling AI what to do. All right, so, and then the final one is brand new, Tradition at Work. This is kind of a revisiting of an assignment in my persuasion class where students create a video where they're talking about some course concepts and trying to connect that to potential future work-related kinds of activities and issues. So it's a live video that gets around AI. It's meant to. It's you doing the presenting, and it's also about you connecting concepts from the class to what you want to do. There's a huge emphasis in the department and in the university over the last 3, 4, 5 years about practicality and workforce readiness. So we want to try to bend a little bit more in sort of like the world of rhetorical action in our daily lives, and specifically maybe our work lives, the kinds of problems, the kinds of conundrums, the kinds of themes, issues, tensions that we might encounter, or more specialty kind of concerns if you're going into broadcast journalism versus, events planning versus coaching. So I had some really cool videos in a recent class where, these are, I think, some of the professions that people were talking about. If you're going into coaching, man, there's a huge amount of like rhetorical insight that you could consider there. Someone was interested in like stand-up comedy. Well, guess what? Even Cicero wrote about like the uses of humor in public presentation. So that's the idea here, is connecting the tradition to your aspirations, your professional aspirations, and make some connections there. Getting pretty long here. So the main thing here, gang, again, is to be clear-eyed about what we're doing in terms of contract grading. The quizzes are graded just because you have to assign some point value to the questions. 9 out of 10 is what we're looking for. Every other assignment is basically pass-fail. It's complete or incomplete. If you pay close attention to those completion standards and if you do all the checklist items, then you should be fine. If you do happen to miss a few things, I often give revision opportunities. I say, you missed this and this and this, please revise. You redo it, you resubmit it. If it all checks out, you're good. Complete, done, right? But sometimes people don't do the revision, or they submit something that's just a complete mess, and then that just is incomplete. And that does happen. It does happen. So it's not like you do the assignment, you get the credit. You got to make sure you're paying attention to the completion standards and hitting all the right notes. Okay, so that leads to the calendar, and this first week is just getting going in Herrick and the 4 main models. I sort of like came up with this many, many years ago. It's sort of based off Tom Conley, who I studied with. It's a refinement of his approach, but thinking about 4 major traditions in terms of rhetorical thought, in terms of rhetorical paradigms, right? And so we got Aristotle, we got Plato, we got the sophists, Gorgias, and we got Isocrates and Cicero. Sort of distinct ways of being rhetorical and engaging in this act of rhetoric. And so we're just going to get going on the broad stuff this week, and I think I have some discussion prompt, introductory kind of stuff, so check that out. And then we have our first quiz coming up, 5 weeks. So it really is like these first 3-4 weeks are really about like, there's not a lot happening, but the material is really important. Aristotle is very important. Plato is very important, the questions that he asks about rhetoric. So all of this initial stuff, and I have really stripped it down. We used to cover a lot more, but this is all the main stuff. So dive in, get going. If you have any questions, concerns, curiosities, do reach out. I'm available through email, through Zoom. We have been told to come back to our offices more, so I'll be on campus 3 days a week this semester, and office hours will be Tuesday and Wednesday from 2 to 4, but I'll be around more than that. I would absolutely love to meet some of you in person, as many as possible. I hope you come by, even if you don't have a question about the class. If you happen to be in the neighborhood, come on by, say hi, introduce yourself. I really miss meeting my students. I teach so many online classes post-COVID that I almost never actually meet students face-to-face anymore, and it kind of bums me out. So come on by, say hi, let's chat, talk about rhetoric, talk about, whatever. And let's kind of meet each other and hang and be brilliant, okay? I hope you all have a great semester. I hope the contract grading system works for you and that it kind of like meets you where you live and that it makes sense and that it feels flexible and robust at the same time. And eager to get going. So see you on the boards. Have a great first day and week, and we'll talk soon. All right, peace, gang.